Elder Scrolls 6. Where will it be? What adventures await us? Fallout 4 has recently shown us that Bethesda game studios can still create amazing worlds that immerse you into another life of adventure, and Elder Scrolls 6 seems almost certain to be the next major game that Bethesda will release. With that in mind, I've been pondering what I'd like to see in Elder Scrolls 6, and in this video I'd like to share 10 of these with you. I want to know what you think and hear what you want to see in the next Elder Scrolls. Before we get started, be sure to check out my recent Elder Scrolls 6 video discussing the recent rumors about what part of Tamriel the game may take place in. Look for the link in the description below. Now, the first thing I'd like to see in Elder Scrolls 6, aging children. While children were a part of Skyrim, they remained the same age. Initially, this may not sound all that interesting, but think about it. Children who are able to age can eventually grow up into an adult. It would be interesting for your child to eventually accompany you on your adventures. Maybe each child could have unique abilities depending on how you raise them and train them, and what they were tutored in. Or, in the case of the Khajiit, what moon phases they were born under would greatly affect what kind of Khajiit they were. But more on that later. It would also be interesting for your children to somewhat resemble the main character and eventually populate the world and live lives of their own. Imagine one day being out in the mountains exploring, only to find a Daedric shrine out in the wilderness, and then one of your long-lost daughters happens to be part of the Daedric cult. I know, for children to grow up, you'd have to play the game for a long time. But the payout of having a saved game with a huge amount of playtime, enough for a child to grow up, would be a reward upon itself. While I doubt Bethesda will implement this anytime soon, the possibilities of this sounds pretty interesting. The second thing on my list, boats. But not just boats, boat things and boat stuff. The ability to build and upgrade your own boat or ship would be amazing. Finding blueprints, maybe a rare ship blueprint in a ruin somewhere, would add to the thrill of exploring for rewards. With larger boats, you can even hire and manage a crew who can gain experience and unlock skills. While having a decent boat would allow you to explore further and further away from the mainland, maybe only certain areas far away could be accessible by the higher level ships. I love the idea of seeing a new island on the distance with new mysteries, quests, and items to discover. You could even be the first person to discover a certain island and the first to loot the dungeons it contains. Third on my list, racial quests. And no, I don't mean racist quests. No running around calling NPCs kittens, lizwads, and other racial slurs. I mean a unique quest chain for each playable race in the game. Orcs have a unique quest chain, Argonians their own, and etc. This would not only make it more interesting to be playing as a certain race, but it would also add to the replay value of the game, as players would want to know and experience what other special quests the other playable races have to offer. Next, I want to build an empire, a faction, a clan, whatever you call it. I want to take over territory, I want to build and upgrade towns, cities, or castles, manage soldiers and generals, defend supply lines, negotiate with kings and queens from other nations and maybe even assassinate them, form alliances, and conquer or free the world. I want to feel like I have a huge part of a living world and an influence on how it carries on. I want to actually feel like I have all this power that you eventually gain throughout an Elder Scrolls game, and I don't want it to be oversimplified. Make it worth the challenge. After all, you can only be proud of your more difficult accomplishments. And speaking of not wanting to oversimplify, the fifth item on my list is just that. Please, please, please don't oversimplify and dumb down Elder Scrolls 6, or any Elder Scrolls game for that matter. Not only have fans never asked for it, but they enjoy the challenge and learning curve of the Elder Scrolls franchise. They come to expect it from every game, and anything that you take out or dumb down in Elder Scrolls 6 will be accepted negatively, I can promise you. Make the game challenging. It makes progress and all the rewards that come with it even more rewarding. And stop deleting Schools of Magic! No, Bethesda! No! Stop it! 6. Realism and immersion. Bethesda are masters of immersing you into another world, another life, one much more interesting than our own. One where we can learn to live and adapt in another world, a world with magic, a beautiful world, a dangerous world. I want the NPCs to seem like living people, with plans, an agenda of which they go about their day, with their own troubles and mischief. I want the world to seem like a living, breathing world, one I feel like I'm actually a part of. And I don't only mean graphics, which Bethesda usually does great with anyway, but I also want good animations, voice acting, first-person stuff, everything and anything that makes me feel like I am part of this world, like I'm really in the game itself. I also appreciate the work Bethesda puts into the world design, including the decor inside of the buildings and the books and novels there are to read. As long as Bethesda expands and improves on all these aspects, I'd be impressed. 7 on my list. I want to see new races, people of lands we haven't ever seen before in an Elder Scrolls game. There are several races of Akavir which no one knows or really anything about or what they look like, only rumors and a few books in the game and legends. But in Tamriel itself, without even going to Akavir across the sea, one can find several races never before seen in the game. We have somewhat seen the Dwemer, the dwarves, before back in Morrowind, but imagine finding a hidden last remaining Dwemer city somewhere deep underground, maybe even the last remaining Ayleid elves. Myself, I am particularly interested in the different forms of Khajiit. Depending on the phases of Nirn's 2 moons upon a Khajiit's birth, it will take on a different form of Khajiit entirely. Some are tall, strong, giant Khajiit, others are the normal Khajiit that you or I come to know. Some Khajiit look like humans and sometimes pretend to be humans, and even more interesting are the Elfiq. Elfiq are Khajiits that look identical to a house cat, and they're the size of a house cat, only they can understand spoken language. They are also intelligent as a Khajiit, and can even cast spells. The possibilities of meeting new things and races in the Elder Scrolls universe is huge. Number 8. Expanded skills, perks, and leveling systems. Don't water it down or make it oversimplified. The more in-depth, the better. I love seeing the skill text pop up on screen, alerting me that I've leveled up a skill. The amount of skills in Elder Scrolls games are great. Light armor, heavy armor, alchemy, sneaking, all the schools of magic, breathing, all with their own skill and perks. I'd like it if possibly cooking was added, or maybe even outdoorsman skills such as camping or tracking. Maybe even add mining as a skill as well. The more, the better in my opinion. I miss the acrobatic skill though. Running around and jumping around the map for the first 3 games, back in Oblivion and Morrowind, fun stuff. Number 9. Instead of the one region, such as only Skyrim or Morrowind for example, how about 2? Elsewhere and Valenwood, for example, they share a border. Being able to travel in between 2 different regions would make the game feel even more epic, as you would have to transition from one political climate to another. You'd also be able to experience more diverse geography and terrain, instead of being stuck with the landscape of the country you are in, such as Skyrim's tundra. This would only work though if Bethesda didn't take away from the content of each individual region, just so that there can be 2. Each country should still have lots of places to explore, the same amount of quests, NPCs, and content. I'd rather have one region that is full of content instead of 2 regions with sparse activities. And speaking of sparse, we get to the last topic on our wish list, more NPCs. I want crowded cities full of NPCs, each with a home, job, life, etc. Similar to the Imperial City in Oblivion, but only more. I imagine running around a crowded city street with a whole bunch of pickpocket opportunities. The world would feel much more populated, which to me has always been a problem in previous Elder Scrolls games. Elder Scrolls games just don't seem to have that many people living in them. Entire regions, if you add up everyone including bandits and everything, entire regions have a population usually under 100 to 200. That's not very big. That means that all of Tamriel probably has about 2,000 people living in it, for an entire continent. That's pretty tiny. If Tamriel is really that dangerous, then mankind and all the races will probably die out soon. I mean, doesn't that make them statistically an endangered species? Anyway, if Bethesda can fill the game with realistic people living realistic lives, and a lot more of them, the world would feel even more real and amazing. These are just 10 of the many things I can think of that I would like to see in Elder Scrolls 6. What do you think of my list? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I really want to know, what would you like to see in Elder Scrolls 6? Comment below and I might feature your comment in a future video. And help keep the dragons at bay by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to my channel. I can't wait to see what Elder Scrolls 6 has to offer, and I'll be sure to share any news I can find. So stay tuned, and as always, thanks for watching.